Anil said, "You are a snob, mister." "Why?" I asked. "Because you won't play Holi. You want to shut yourself up in your house when everyone else is celebrating the coming of spring. I know you are afraid to spoil your clothes." I shrugged my shoulders to let him know that he could think what he liked. "You are afraid of your parents, that's why it is," continued Anil. "You are afraid of being punished for running around with bazaar people." "You are welcome to think so," I said coldly. Anil had often told me about Holi. It was not merely a Hindu festival of playing with colors when men and women and children threw colored dust and water on each other, when there were singing and shouting and the beating of drums. It also heralded the Hindu New Year, when nature is born again, blossoming out in color and music. New color, new music, new life. Seasons die and seasons are born again. The colors that are thrown are an expression of joy in the new springtime of life and young love. The Holi festival held a fascination for me, but until I was 15, my parents, who had brought me to India 2 years earlier, when my father had taken a job with a new hydroelectric project, had not allowed me to take part in the celebration. They were afraid I might get hurt in the rough play or be lost in the bazaars. I had stayed at home listening to the drums, the songs, and the inviting shouts of some of my school friends. Anil's father kept a cloth shop in the bazaar, and it was in the bazaar that I had met Anil, for he went to a different school. I was walking home from the post office and did not pay much attention to the large cow that was moving leisurely through the crowd, nosing around the vegetable stalls. A cyclist came down the road, pedaling furiously. Pedestrians scattered. I found myself beside the cow, in the middle of the road. The cyclist was faced with the choice of colliding either with me or with the cow. He chose me. "You clumsy fellow!" I cried, picking myself up from the ground, while the cow stared sorrowfully at me. "I'm sorry," said the cyclist, "a boy of about my age." I couldn't help it. "Why not?" "Why not? Because if I had not bumped into you, I would have bumped into the cow." Then, as he saw me growing indignant, he hurried on. "Please don't misunderstand. It is not that I preferred the cow to you, but I might have broken my head if I had banged into her. She is an immovable object and you are not." I could think of no retort. A few weeks later, I saw the boy again, but we were on a lonely road this time, with plenty of space in which to avoid bumping into each other. But seeing a familiar face, the boy swerved his bicycle dangerously to the edge of the road and almost swept me off my feet. "Oh, hello there," he said, making sure his cycle had not been damaged. "And how are you?" "I'm fine," I said, preparing to continue my walk. The boy got into step with me and pursued the topic of my well-being. "I hope I did not hurt you that day in the bazaar." "You were going the other way just now, weren't you?" I said very rudely. He looked disappointed, but then he smiled, and there was something about his smile that made me smile too. And he said, "Don't be so angry." "I'm not angry," I said. "Please don't be hurt." "I'm not hurt." "Please don't be a snob." This had more effect. The boy watched me with astonishment as my cheeks grew red. "I'm not a snob," I said. The boy grinned at me. "Now you are angry and hurt, so you are not a snob. Good. Come and have some chat with me." Standing off the road was a small wooden shop draped with sacking. I hesitated in the entrance, suspicious of the wild sweet smells, of the murmur of unfamiliar voices, of the fact that I knew nothing about the stranger who had invited me in. But to have refused would have been to invite further derision. I followed the boy into the shop. I discovered that chaat was a spiced and sweetened mixture of different fruits and vegetables potatoes, guavas, bananas, and oranges, all sliced up, served on broad green leaves, and eaten with the help of a little stick like a toothpick. It had an unusual and exciting flavor. You like it? Asked the boy. I think so, I said. Don't think so, just like it. Is it bad for the stomach? For unfamiliar stomachs, so the best way to make your stomach familiar is to keep eating. He ordered more, in spite of my protest. Then he said, May I know your name? Laurie, I said, and asked him his. Anil, Anil Kumar. Kumar means prince, but of course I am not a prince. His black hair was thick and strong. His eyes were a deep brown. He wore a thin, almost transparent cotton shirt, broad white pajamas, and open slippers with leather straps. We ate chaat and talked, and that is how Anil and I became friends. We often would meet in the evenings and eat at different places, and it was as Anil said, my stomach soon became accustomed to unfamiliar cooking. We took walks across the Maidan, a spacious grassy ground always crowded with children and dogs and cows and people making speeches. And on holidays, we would cycle out of the town into the fields down to the river. As Holi neared, Anil began to make his preparations. He fashioned a sort of bicycle pump from a piece of bamboo and tried it out with water. It worked. You'd better get out of your worst clothes, he said. The color won't come off easily. You don't expect me to play, I said. And why not? Well, first there are my parents, and second there is yourself. You are ashamed to play. No, it's not that, I said. Anil put his hand on my shoulder and gave me a stern look. Have you forgotten that a few days after we met I sent you a Christmas card? That's true. But you sent it in February. Well, I hadn't met you in December. Do you know that I pinched my father's best greeting card and cut out of the page that I had been written on in order to send it to you? Yes, I noticed that. Did you want me to think you'd bought it yourself? Well, they are not available in February. Anyway, the point is I share your festivals, but you do not share mine. And having banished all argument, he returned to fashioning his bamboo pump. I heard the shouting and clapping, the singing and beating of drums. I jumped out of bed and ran to the window. A procession of boys and girls were moving down the road. They were laughing and throwing color about, and their clothes were rich shades of orange and mauve and red and green. Down the road came the procession, and down the road came Anil with his bicycle pump. The procession passed on, but Anil lingered near our gate. It was difficult to recognize him. He wore only a loincloth and looked like an effigy of a green god. My room had its own interest, and I slipped out through the garden, climbed the wall, and joined Anil on the road. Anil smiled, a white smile in a green face, and covered my face with purple powder. Then he squirted me with his bicycle pump. He had brought a pump for me too. We joined the procession and went all over the town, shouting and singing and throwing color through the bazaar and across the Maidan, painting the town with the colors of spring. And when I returned home in the afternoon, drenched with color from head to foot, I found my parents waiting for me in the veranda. They didn't recognize me at first, but when they did, my father burst into laughter, while my mother told me to get under the shower immediately. Well, I suppose he can look after himself now, I heard my father saying. We'll be here till the end of the year, and it's time he found friends of his own age.